What a championship returns for a huge weekend of fixtures. It is match day 35 and today we are going to preview and predict all 12 weekend games. As always, I'll encourage you to do exactly the same in the comments below. And if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap on Sunday as we look ahead to another full midweek fixture list in a championship. We're heading towards the run-in now and it's a big weekend. We had Premier League predictions yesterday. We've got Championship today. And before we go and look ahead to match day 35, we need to have a quick recap of what happened last weekend in match day 34. Now, I don't often get to do this, so you're going to have to forgive me for a second because I'm going to have a little gloat. I got 12 points overall with 3 perfect scores and 3 other correct outcomes in a weekend that, let's be honest, was full of shocks. And that put me on 12 points, which is significantly clear of the field. It's your job to catch up with me this week, because I picked up 12, the closest competitor was 9. And to be fair, it was a weekend where a lot of results were surprising. I mean, the fact that Southampton and Sunderland and Watford lost at home, one of those I did predict, obviously. Middlesbrough at home to Plymouth as well. And then Coventry at home to Preston, not just the defeat, but the scoreline. It was a bonkers weekend. But I did get perfect scores for Hull City v West Brom, the Championship's favourite scoreline delivering, as well as QPR's 2-1 win at home to Rotherham, a crucial one at the bottom, and Huddersfield's 2-1 win away at Watford. So that made it 12 points for me, and I did win this match day. Now it's over to you. Get your predictions in for this weekend and see if you can beat me down in the comments, because we move on to match day 35 and we start with Friday night football, a huge game in the battle for the Championship playoffs. It is 5th place West Brom versus 9th place Coventry. 5 points separate the sides, and this is going to be a battle, isn't it? Coventry were shocking at home to Preston. You all talked about the curse in the comments. I was so convinced it was going to end, but not to be this time. A heavy defeat and a terrible display. Worst of the season, I think Mark Robins called it. But it bounced back against Maidstone. Ellis Sims popping up with an early hat-trick, and Tavares a couple off the bench as well. West Brom, a 1-1 draw at Hull. Hull probably showed a little bit more initiative in this game, but in the end, a draw, a great result for West Brom. They didn't have a huge amount of the ball, but they did have a threat on the counter. And in the end, more shots on target. But they were under a bit of pressure with constant set pieces, corners, etc. But in truth, a really decent point for them. Keeps up a decent run of form. I mean, both sides have only lost 1 of the last 6. This should be a good game. I do fear it's going to be a bit cagey. Coventry, despite not many of them coming on the road, have drawn the second most games after Huddersfield this year. West Brom normally win at home 11 out of 17 and have got the best defence in the league after the top 2 at home as well. So I think this is going to be a low scoring game. And I think they're going to cancel each other out. I'm going to go safe to start off. And I'm going to begin with the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1 at the Hawthorns. Let's move on to 2 games on Saturday lunchtime. The first is a big one. Bristol City versus Cardiff City. These games are always feisty, aren't they? Bristol City, I just give up. I genuinely give up. 2 wins in a row against Borough and Southampton. Then 2 defeats in a row at home to QPR and at Sheffield Wednesday. I'm done. I'm not trying to predict them anymore. Cardiff City, a 2-1 win at home to Stoke. A really important win. A really good result for them. And probably just about secures their safety after a terrible run of form. They're in that middle pack in the table now and they're comfortably clear by 9 points. It's going to be a high total to avoid relegation, you'd think, as well. But Cardiff were probably second best for large parts of that game, but they showed that clinical edge and they defended their box pretty well. In the end, you have to say well done to them for picking up the 3 points. On a serious note, Bristol City, they got back on level terms pretty early against Sheffield Wednesday, but for the most part, they were outplayed. They had a few chances from set pieces, but Sheffield Wednesday were the bigger threat from open play. They showed more initiative and they won as a result. I think this is going to be another interesting game. And I'm kind of going on the basis that Bristol City don't often win or lose 3 in a row. I mean, at home, they're pretty average. They've won 7, they've lost 7. Cardiff away from home, pretty much mid-table record. I have no idea what the score's going to be. It's the hardest game to predict of the weekend. Any game with Bristol City is. I'm going to go for the host to get back to winning ways. I'm going to go by 2-1, which will inevitably come back to bite me. As we move on to the other early kickoff, the TV game, a Yorkshire derby. It is Huddersfield Town versus Leeds United. And Leeds are flying high. My pre-season title prediction is coming to fruition and in the manner that I said as well. A 3-1 win against Leicester. I'm a little bit annoyed, to be honest, because that perfectly good Leicester goal that didn't stand ruined another perfect score for me, 3-2, and it would have been a great weekend for me. But still, a really good comeback. And to be fair, Leeds played well for the most part of that game. Yes, they didn't take their chances, but in the first half, Pirro had a couple of really good opportunities. And while they're always going to be a little bit susceptible defensively, Leicester had some glorious opportunities. Leeds were fantastic going forward. They played to the crowd and the crowd played their part. And they've got a lot of attacking talent, which means they're always going to be in with a chance in games. So a really important win to close the gap to 6 points at the top and make Leicester look over their shoulder. For Huddersfield, an even more important win, you could argue, away at Watford. There's now 3 wins in 5. The new management looking very good with a slightly different style of play there. Now, Huddersfield played really well in that game. Of course, the way they're going to play now, they're going to give up a few more chances. We understand that. But they were aggressive. They did press a little higher. They played with more energy. And to be fair, that partly comes from having most of their players back now as well. It's good timing for the manager. They were playing against a side out of form, but they took advantage and they bounced back from the disappointment of going behind really well. Danny Ward to the rescue with a brace. And given some of the other results down there, that was crucial because virtually everyone at the bottom won in that battle to avoid 22nd. So this game is going to be an interesting one. But if Huddersfield play the way they did against Watford, it's going to open up spaces at the back. And you would expect Leeds to be far more clinical than Watford were at the weekend. Leeds in their last 5 games have scored 2 or more in all of them. They've popped up with 2 4s and 2 3s. And I think they're going to get another 3 here. I'm going to go for Huddersfield to have a threat themselves. I'm going to go for Leeds to win by 3-1. As we move on to the remaining 9 3 p.m. kickoffs, we start with Birmingham City versus Southampton. Birmingham beaten pretty comfortably at Ipswich after those 2 late goals. And to be fair, Birmingham did cling on in there and have their own threat. I mean, Ipswich dominated the game, registered the most clear-cut chances of any team in any game this season. And in the end, Birmingham were probably lucky it was only 3. But not the game they're going to be judged on at the moment. Of course, very disappointing that Tony Mowbray's not able to be in the dugout for them. But after those 2 big home wins, we've mentioned it before. The home form is what's going to save Birmingham City. And Southampton, as well as 2 pretty dismal defeats in the last week, have now got Liverpool on Wednesday night. And a quick caveat at this point, I'm recording this on Wednesday prior to Leeds and Southampton's cup tie, so can't bear them in mind. But Southampton, a 2-1 defeat at home to Millwall. No one saw it coming. And to be fair, Southampton just sort of reverted to type. They had 80% of the ball. They kept moving it around, but they didn't create that many chances. Yes, they had enough clear opportunities to win the game. I'm not denying that. But they weren't constantly bombarding as, say, Ipswich were against Birmingham. 14 shots in the end. And yes, 3 or 4 of them were great opportunities. But one of those days, I think, 3 defeats in 4 and a bad time to hit a rough patch because they're now 5 points adrift of the top 2. They're going to need to get back in form pretty quickly. And this game is going to be a pretty tough one because Birmingham's home form, despite the Wayne Rooney spell, is still in the top half of the Championship. They've only lost 3 games at home all season. And most of the games have been fairly tight. Their goal difference only +5. Southampton on the road, fantastic. But again, nowhere near as free scoring as at home. Scored about half the amount of goals. So I'm tempted to go for a bit of a thriller here. Despite what I've just said, I'm going to go for it. I've got a hunch this is going to be a great game. I'm going to go for Birmingham 2, Southampton 2. Neither of them have drawn for ages, so surely they're both due one. Let's move on to the league leaders. Are they now under pressure? It is Leicester City versus Queen's Park Rangers. Leicester won 1-0 in extra time at Bournemouth in the Cup in midweek. Quarter-final for them, but they did rotate a bit, so we're not going to see too many fatigue legs in there. It was important for them to get a result, though, after 2 disappointing league defeats at home to Borough and away at Leeds. Bit of a collector's item, isn't it? Back-to-back defeats for Leicester. And after that defeat at Leeds, they've no longer got the meanest defence in the division either. But QPR are quite the opposite of that. Back-to-back wins for them against Bristol City and Rotherham. Yes, games that are going to be far less difficult than the Leicester one. And yes, games against sides that they probably would have fancied beating. But that psychological edge now of being out of the relegation zone for a day, just to know that they can do it, is an incredible moment for them. Of course, we had the drama with Ilias Chair. Was he or wasn't he going to prison in Belgium? Popped up with a winner against Bristol City. And then this week against Rotherham, Chris Willock, another one of those old stars who's been very quiet for a year or so, popped up with an important goal as well. To come back from behind against Rotherham when they could have been frustrated, it's a really important result for them. However, this game's going to be tricky. Will the playing in midweek have an effect? I doubt it with so many players being out. There's part of me that just thinks this game's going to be the one where there's a surprise. And I'm going to go for it. Leicester are going to be favourites, and I'm probably going to lose a point or three to most of you. But I just feel they're having a little wobble now. I think if QPR can get the first goal in this game and frustrate them, it might be a very long afternoon for Leicester. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1, and I'm prepared to look very stupid when we return on Sunday. As we move on to a big game for a side in that relegation battle, because Neil Harris's Millwall host Watford. And Neil Harris, my word, what an instant impact. Now, let's be fair, as we mentioned earlier, Southampton had enough chances to win the game and on another day would have won 3 or 4-2. However, Millwall went back to their old ways, didn't try and keep possession, didn't try and be aggressive in the press. They sat back in a good shape, they played on the counter, they created chances, and they nicked a 2-1 win. A fantastic result. And a really important one for them because they would have been in a relegation zone based on other results. So Neil Harris having an instant impact, and he's going to need to again because Watford at home is a game he's got to target. In all competitions, they've lost 5 of their last 6, winning only against bottom team Rotherham. At home to Huddersfield, they were outdone by a new manager there. Okay, a manager playing a very different style. And to be fair, Watford on the road this season have been pretty good. They've normally been better away from home than at home. They've picked up 24 of their 44 points on the road. I really don't know what to go for in this game. There's a lot of very tough ones to predict, and last weekend has made it very tricky. The way that Millwall played last week makes me think we're going back to the old Millwall here. So I'm going to go for a gritty 1-0 win at the Den. The fans will be right on board with Neil Harris, especially after last week's result. I think this is going to be a really battling, cagey affair. I think Mill will win it 1-0, and maybe the talk about Valérien Ismaël's job continues to gather momentum. As we move on to another game in the race for the playoffs, it is 7th v 10th. It is Norwich versus Sunderland. And Norwich City, a 1-1 draw away at Blackburn, keeps a 5-game unbeaten run going. And again, maybe David Wagner's team hitting form at the right time. Wasn't a great Norwich performance. They were pretty poor going forward, which is unlike them. But a great goal from a free kick rescued them a point. They did have a fair amount of the ball, but Blackburn created chances. And in the end, could have been a very different scoreline in truth. But 5 unbeaten, and when they've not been able to score goals like they had in the previous 4, they managed to keep it fairly tight at the back, which we've not always been able to say about Norwich this year. For Sunderland, though, 3 defeats in a row. No dream start for the interim this time. 2 early goals for Swansea put them right under the cosh. And while they came back into the game, Swansea had more good chances and probably the better chances as well. If you look at the clear-cut attempts, it was 4-2. And to be fair, you have to say Swansea deserved the win. A little bit uninspiring. A little bit of a morale boost needed at Sunderland. And you just wonder if they can pick up a result. Because 8 points off the playoffs now. If they lose this one, you'd probably say it's too little too late. And the big thing for Sunderland has been losing games. They've lost 15 this season, which is the most of anyone in the top half. 5 draws, which bar Leicester is the least. They're not picking up those single points. If they're not winning games, they're generally losing them. And all those last 3 by the odd goal. So this game, I was going to go for a draw initially, but I can't based on that. Norwich have been excellent at home this season. Sunderland have been pretty dismal on the road, which is amazing compared to last season and probably part of the effect of Tony Mowbray not being there for most of it. Norwich have got a top 6 record at home. They score goals for fun at home. So I'm going to go for a narrow defeat for Sunderland, but I'm going to go for a thriller. This is my game of the weekend. Norwich City to win by 3-2. As we move on to a game between last season's top 2 in League One, it is Plymouth Argyle versus Ipswich Town. Plymouth, well, what an important result that was at Middlesbrough. And Ian Foster, you've got to give it to him. They've been useless at home since he's taken over, albeit against some of the best sides in the league. But he's found away wins. They picked up their first couple of the season, and they managed to get a really good start in that game. 2 up after half an hour, restricted Middlesbrough to no shots on target, had 11 themselves. And I mean, it was just a brilliant away performance. It was a real joy to watch. Tactically, it was fascinating. And Middlesbrough were a million miles from their best. They were desperate. They were trying to score from everywhere in the end. But for Plymouth, it was just a wonderful display of counter-attacking football on the road. One of the best away performances tactically you'll see this year. And found a way to create bundles of chances, which, without conceding goals at the other end, is a bit of a miracle for Plymouth this year. But they play an Ipswich side who are just as fascinating. And we talked earlier in the season about the home form being full of goals, the away form being a bit tighter. Well, that's gone down the drain, hasn't it? 6 goals in the last 2 away games, 7 in the last 2 home games. It's been crazy. After the Rotherham one, do you know what? Against Birmingham, I know it took to the last 10 minutes to win it. They were brilliant as well. So you're probably watching Ipswich after one of their best performances of the season, going to Plymouth, who just produced their best away performance of the year. Everything suggests this is going to be a classic, but Plymouth have struggled at home to all of the top teams recently and have really struggled to create chances and goals. So I am going to edge Ipswich on this game, who are now right back in that race for the top 2 after their little blip. And I'm going to go for both teams to score, as you would probably expect, but Ipswich to nick it just by 2-1 at home park. Into the final 4, and we've got 2 informed teams here. The race for the playoff continues with 8th v 6th. It is Preston North End versus Hull City. So many good games in this playoff race this weekend. Preston, I hold my hands up. That was, again, probably one of their better performances of the season at Coventry. 3-0 up, 3 shots on target, albeit there was an own goal, so it was one more. But it was a pretty even game. It was a really bizarre one. But once Coventry got it to 3 at half-time, they were just able to sit back and relax and enjoy the ride, which you've got to say is a great luxury in the Championship, to just sit behind the ball, not expend too much energy, ahead of a week off as well. It's a real great blitz, and they're getting their best strikers back. Jacobson adding to the goals now of Will Keane as well. And Ryan Lowe, I've said it before, is not a team I would want to watch particularly. But you've got to say, with the resources he's got and the teams he's up against, he's doing one hell of a job there. He's got them up within 3 points of the playoffs. And the team they're trying to chase down are Hull City, who again are not playing brilliantly at the minute, but are picking up results. They got a 1-1 draw against fellow playoff hopefuls West Bromwich Albion, a really decent game, and probably Hull showed slightly more initiative, but in the end, a really decent game between 2 good sides. Hull had more of the territory, more of the set pieces. West Brom looked more of a threat on the counter. And Hull dominating possession, starting to look good with some of those new signings. Fabio Carvalho playing well again and scoring. 4 unbeaten for them, 6 unbeaten for Preston. I mean, this is going to be a good game, isn't it? I would expect it to be tight. I would expect it to be low scoring. I think it's going to be high quality. My problem is Preston are another one of those sides. When I predict them, they then go and throw it away. Hull have been winning most games on the road by the odd goal. They won their last 3 away games 2-1. Preston have been scoring goals again, but everything about me wants to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline here. But I'm not going to. I'm going to go for Hull to win 1-0. And I know this is going to be a regret because it's probably going to be 1-1. And Leicester are probably going to beat QPR 2-1. But I'm going to stick my neck on the line. This always happens when I have a good week. I get overconfident. I make mistakes. I'm going for Hull City by 1-0. As we move on to a huge game in Yorkshire at the bottom, it is Rotherham United versus Sheffield Wednesday. Rotherham, after throwing away 4 points in 4 days, the 1-0 lead against QPR and a 3-3 draw at Ipswich, getting no points out of those games in the end is going to be the hammer blow. They are 16 from safety. Everyone else won. It's done. Rotherham will be a League One team next year. They host Sheffield Wednesday though, and they will be hoping to bring their Yorkshire rivals with them because Sheffield Wednesday are hitting form. 3 wins out of 4. They've beaten all those sides in that bottom end that you would expect them to. Birmingham and Bristol City, good wins at home. A great win at Millwall as well. And they are starting to look like a side that are going to produce a miracle with Danny Roll. Ugbo has been the most inspired signing, probably the best January signing in the league. I've got to be honest. The difference he's made there. Deshaun Bernard's late red card will be a problem for this week. But Sheffield Wednesday are creating chances. They're creating opportunities. And they're only 3 points from safety. If they can get a win here, this is going to start to look very, very tense for a lot of teams. We're going to get to the stage where, 5 points are separating 8 teams now, and Sheffield Wednesday with a win here could make it 9. I'm going to go for them to nick this game. I know the Rotherham-Sheffield Wednesday games have often been exciting and dramatic in the past. I actually think this is going to be quite comfortable for Wednesday. And I know that I could end up looking silly here because Rotherham, look, they're going to win a game at some point. But I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to keep up the good form and win away at Rotherham United by 2-0. Let's get into the penultimate one for under pressure Steven Schumacher. It is Stoke City versus Middlesbrough. To be fair, Middlesbrough aren't doing great either. One win in their last 5 championship matches, that was at Leicester remarkably, whereas Stoke City, 1 win in their last 6, and that was at home to QPR. Disappointment at Cardiff, but Schumacher was right. They played better. They had a lot of the ball. They had the best chances of the match, but they're just missing that clinical edge. And defensively, they're a little bit of a mess, which is the one thing you wouldn't expect with the team they've got out. They've got a load of good strikers at the club, but all of them are out of form at the same time. So that's something that's got to be addressed. But I still kind of think Stoke will get out of it somehow, just because they are playing pretty well at times. For Middlesbrough, we saw a gritty performance away at Leicester, followed by an absolute stinker at home to Plymouth. I know we mentioned how good Plymouth were in their section, but no shots on target for Borough. Created one great chance from memory. And in the end, we're just getting desperate and shooting from everywhere. There wasn't that pattern. There wasn't that game plan. All that trust in those attacking players. And the lack of goal threat compared to last season is remarkable. Yes, Latilaf was back off the bench. Greenwood came on, but again, is part of a team that just looks a little toothless in front of goal. Marcus Forss not in the best of form in the world. It's just not really happening for Middlesbrough this season. It's a bit of a frustrating year. And it makes this game quite difficult to predict. I expect it to be close. I expect it to be a game where Stoke probably try and have more of the ball, Middlesbrough try and counter. And it comes down to which one of these two toothless attacks takes more chances. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough because despite neither really taking many chances in their last 6, Borough have taken slightly more chances and have been the only ones to score 2 in one of their last 6 games. And they do concede a few less goals. We've seen Stoke fall to a 5, a 3, and obviously another 2 last week as well. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to nick it 2-1, but it just depends on which attack turns up. And at the moment, you can't predict which one it's going to be. As the final game of the weekend is Swansea City versus Blackburn Rovers. A brilliant win for Swansea at Sunderland. And you know what? A good performance to go with it. You've got to say, Luke Williams is finally starting to stamp his print on this team. And we mentioned that he came in and had an awful run of fixtures and to have picked up 2 big away wins at Hull and to then have picked one up at Sunderland as well to keep them, well, at touching distance away from the relegation zone at 4 points clear now. Really important for them. And look, the run of games is going to get easier now and Blackburn at home is one of them. Blackburn are draws galore, obviously lost on penalties in the week to Newcastle, a big effort over 120 minutes. And he did play a lot of the first team, which is going to make this pretty tricky going into the weekend. Sammy Schmodik's playing 2 hours. Not ideal going into Saturday. They have been playing a bit more defensively, particularly in that away game that we saw at Cardiff and at Birmingham as well. The way Blackburn have been playing on the road this season, John Eustace has gone for the approach of trying not to get beat because Blackburn have let in 32 goals on the road. They're not going to achieve much if they keep conceding at that rate. But then Swansea have got a relegation record at home. They're in the bottom 3 when it comes to their home form. 1 point a game, 18 scored in 17. The goal threat's not really there. I don't know what to go for in this one. Part of me thinks Swansea will nick it because of the circumstances of Blackburn in midweek. But I'm just going to sit on the fence and finish with one. The Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. But with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what we've gone for in Matchday 35. 3 Championship's favourite scorelines. Most shockingly, I've gone for QPR to nick a point at Leicester City. God, I'm going to regret that, aren't I? My game of the weekend is Norwich City to win 3-2 against Sunderland in one of those big games in the battle for the playoffs. I've also gone for Hull to nick a win at Preston, West Brom and Coventry to cancel each other out. And in the battle of the bottom, I've got Sheffield Wednesday to get 3 points, QPR to get 1, Millwall to pick up 3, and Huddersfield to be the big losers with a 3-1 defeat at home to Leeds. But those are just my predictions for Matchday 35. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comments below. I've got a sneaky suspicion that after my Matchday winning performance last weekend, it's going to come crashing back down with some of these bold predictions. But more importantly, let me know yours in the comments below. And if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap as we look ahead to Matchday 36. We'll be back on Sunday evening for that as the games take place across Tuesday and Wednesday. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this one, please do put a thumbs up on the video. If you want more predictions, we had our Premier League ones yesterday. They're up in the eye above too. We'll be back with League One shorts tomorrow as well. There's also a link in the description to HelloFresh UK for 60% off plus free delivery on your first box. There's loads of quick and easy recipes with pre-portioned ingredients, which makes it nice and easy if you're lazy like me when it comes to the kitchen. But thank you very much for your support as always and watching this Championship prediction show. I'll see you back here on Sunday for another one as the running fixtures come thick and fast.